Hello and welcome to Ewe Sew You. My name's Zoe and this is my channel all about the crafty bits and pieces I get up to. I knit, I sew, I spin on a drop spindle, I dabble in weaving from time to time, and anything else that takes my crafty fancy. And today we're talking about the things I've been working on in September, so grab a brew, put your feet up and let's get started. Welcome back to any returning viewers, and to any new viewers, a very warm welcome to you. Now, as I mentioned at the opening to this video, we're looking at the things I've been working on in September. So first of all, let's have a little chat about what I am wearing. I'll get into more detail when I get into the finished objects section. This is a ready to wear cardigan from Simply Be, so it's a nice long line, throw it on over stuff cardigan, so that's great. It comes down to sort of mid-calf, almost ankles. And underneath I have my Kilo jumpsuit by Named Clothing, and as I say, I'll go into a little bit more detail about making this up in the finished objects section in a moment. But I do want to address my lack of productivity in September. It's not a problem. It doesn't matter if you don't produce very much stuff in the course of a month, and unless you're like trying to produce content for the internet, then it's a bit of an issue. But in general terms, it doesn't really matter how much you get done as long as you're enjoying the process and you're getting items out of it at the end of the day that you're happy with. But I have had a couple of things knock my productivity down over the past few weeks, and ironically, one of them is a course to improve my productivity. So I've been doing some courses online, just to help me sort of plan and prepare and get things going so that I don't put too much on my plate at once. So it's sort of identifying things and scheduling things out and that sort of stuff, as well as a course to progress the other side of my creative life, which is writing. You may have noticed, if you follow me on Instagram, that I have a second account there now, which is more focused around that kind of thing. But I'm not going to get into depth about my writing on this channel. So hop along over to my Zoe M. Atkins Instagram for information on that. I don't know if I'll be doing a writing YouTube at any point in the future. Not at this stage. But yeah, Instagram is a place to keep up with that side of things. So that sort of stuff has been taking my time a bit, as courses do. And the other thing has obviously been current events in the UK, let's say. Unless you've been living under a rock, you'll be aware that the Queen died a few weeks ago. And yeah, the coverage of the funeral and the national period of mourning, the 10 days from when she died until the funeral, was something else. I am quite amazed at how well the BBC managed to find things to say about a queue that varied from 5 to 10 miles depending on the day. It's like 4 or 5 days of reporting on a queue. It really is a national obsession. So things were a bit weird for a while. They are pretty much back to normal in the UK now. Obviously there are a few things that are going to change over the coming years. Nothing's going to happen very quickly. At some point, probably next year, there'll be a coronation, so we'll probably get another bank holiday, but otherwise things are going to take a bit of time. Post boxes will eventually change, but the Royal Mail has already said that they don't change the royal cipher on the post boxes until they replace the post box, and we've actually still got some in use that date back to Victoria's reign, apparently. They stay in place with the insignia of the monarch that was reigning when they were put there until we need a new one, until they rust through or something or get vandalised. Or if we need one in a new place, then we'll get King Charles's cipher put on them. And I hadn't quite twigged, I should have twigged this. I used to live in Scotland, I should have twigged this. The royal cipher in Scotland is different to the royal cipher in England. Partly because Elizabeth I wasn't Queen in Scotland. So it's not E2R in Scotland, it's E Scottish Crown R. And Charles likewise has a separate cipher for Scotland to England. History's fascinating. This is what you've got to bear in mind with the UK. Our history is measured in monarchs, whereas somewhere like the United States, it's not going to be. It's going to be measured by events. But in the United Kingdom, it's measured in monarchs. So we are living through a period of time that is very definitely going to appear in history books for our grandchildren to study. And that's kind of odd. So postboxes are going to take a long time to change. They may even, Elizabeth's postboxes will probably outlive Charles because she was queen for such a long time. So that's going to take time to change. Money will also take time to change. I think I read somewhere 2024 for the release of the first notes and coins with Charles's head on, because we have the monarch's profile on our currency. Another thing I hadn't realised was it's tradition to flip the direction the monarch is facing on the coins when they change. And there's one time period where that didn't happen, so you end up with 3 kings all facing the same way, and that's around about when the abdication was happening. So the king that abdicated, Edward? Modern history is not my bag. I did medieval for GCSE. But he decided he wanted his best side in his profile, so he ended up facing the same way as his father. So when his brother, George, took over, so the Queen's dad, they carried on as if Edward had flipped his image. So we've got these 3 kings all in the same order. So that's a little quirk that I hadn't realised. And it will take time to replace money. When we brought in the polymer notes, that took years to replace each denomination. So it's not like they're going to call all the money in and replace it with new stuff. It will be produced gradually. And the same with stamps, they're going to switch to Charles's profile as well. But again, that'll be gradually, so it's going to take time. So things are now just going to run along pretty much as normal, and things will just gradually get introduced as they come up, with the one blip of the coronation coming up, as I say, probably some point next year. And for those of us interested in history, that's going to be quite interesting to watch. As that was the thing with the events surrounding the death of the Queen. We had proclamations made using the same words that would have been used in medieval times. And the heralds' outfits, I don't think they've changed since the medieval times either. They're quite something else. For somebody who's into history, it was interesting to see it. Obviously there is the whole royalist republican thing. In the UK, when they did a survey a couple of years ago, it's a 50-something% in favour of the monarchy, but 80-odd% in favour of the Queen. To give you a bit of an idea as to where the UK stands from a royalist, non-royalist point of view. I'm simply looking at it from a history perspective. Not that I'm a professional historian or anything, it's just an interest of mine. So it's been interesting, but things are as they were. That's been a bit distracting, and as a result I haven't got as much made as I had hoped to get made, but like I say, that's not an issue. I still got stuff done, and stuff still will get done, not a problem. So, finished objects. As I've already mentioned it, let's start with the kilo jumpsuit. I looked at this jumpsuit and thought, oh, that's going to be nice and quick. There's 2 pattern pieces for the exterior, 2 pattern pieces for the interior, because it's got facings, and it's in a jersey. I can whiz that up on the overlocker. In fact, 3 pattern pieces for the outside. You've got the ties as well. So that's not going to take any time at all. Really straightforward. Boy, was I wrong. It's a lot more complex than I expected it to be. I really should have realised facings and under stitching and all that kind of stuff, it's bound to be a little bit more complicated. So you cut out 2 front pieces, 2 back pieces, 2 ties, 2 back facings, 1 front facing. There are instructions included for a sleeved version and a sleeveless version. I've opted to do the sleeveless, partly because it's then easier to put cardigans over the top, and it will also mean that I can wear it through different seasons. It does have a vent at the back, which, because I've got quite a broad back and quite a short waist, I haven't made any adjustments to the pattern. It's gaping quite a bit, so I just have to be careful about what I wear underneath it. I mean, crop top underneath, vest underneath, it's going to be fine. Cardigans over the top for work, that kind of thing. And the armholes are, the arm size are quite low. So I think if I make it again, I will either adjust the pattern that I've already traced out to change the shape of the arm size to lift them up a bit, and shorten the back to see if that helps with the gaping. Not that I mind the gaping too much, but it would be nice to have something that's a little bit more subtle at the back. So that's my only sort of pattern adjustment that I want to try to see if I can get a slightly better fit there. I did try and adjust the underarms after making the rest of the garment, and I really shouldn't have bothered. What I did was I sewed up the seams a little bit further without really thinking about it, and of course that just makes the gape in the back wider because you're pulling the fabric round under your arms. And then I had to unpick it all, and obviously it stretched out the fabric a little bit. I've also managed to stretch out the neckline slightly as well. So I'll do some adjustments to the pattern for the back pieces and for the arm size if I make it again. But making this took me a lot longer than I expected, partly because I did silly things, like whilst using my overlocker, I attached the facing wrong side to right side. That doesn't work. So I had to unpick it all, which is why the front neckline is slightly stretched out, and stitch it back together again. That was annoying. Then at the back, for the closure at the top of the neck, there's a single button, and you're meant to put a ribbon loop on to close it, but you do that whilst you're sewing the facing to the back opening. Great, that's fine. I found a bit of ribbon that was a little bit wider than ideal, but would work, and was in a good colour match. Sewed it the wrong way round. So the ribbon was inside the facing instead of sticking out. I wasn't unpicking that seam. So I've done a thread loop instead to go around the button, and that's working fine. So yeah, few issues. One thing I will say about the pattern instructions is in the sleeved version, because they had the bullet points of the instruction with sleeved or sleeveless, whether applicable to one or the other. In the sleeved version, it tells you to serge the bottom edge of the facings. And even though I'd read through the pattern and highlighted the steps that I needed for the sleeveless version, I hadn't twigged that at no point in the ones that are labelled sleeveless does it tell you to serge the bottom of your facings. So the bottom edge of my facings are unfinished. They're on the inside, they're stitched down around the armholes and down the back opening, so they're not going to flip out to the outside or anything, but it's just a little bit annoying. So I will be serging those if I make this version again, just to give it a nicer finish on the inside, but people seeing me out in the world, watching me walk by, aren't going to know that that's not finished, and it's not like it's going to fray. So there's that. It was also my first time working with knit interfacing. I've heard of this mythical stuff before, never bothered to buy it. I've used ribbons to stabilise shoulder seams on t-shirts and that kind of thing, but never used knit interfacing before. That's like cutting out liquid. Very slippy. I don't know how much benefit it gives, because it stretches as much as the fabric does. So it's not like it's holding things firm. I suppose it may give some help to not stretch things out as you're wearing it. I don't know. I may need something with less stretch in it to get the finish that I'd like on this. It was interesting, but it was a struggle to cut. So that's my kilo. I do like it. I will probably only ever be wrapping the ties around the front, so that the wrap bit, cause the kilo has these pointy hips that are attached to the ties, and you wrap that round and tie it up. I wrap to the front, then around the back and back to the front, and knot at the front so that I'm not leaning against the knot when I sit back. And that gives a nice appearance across my lumps and bumps, which I quite like. It's not that I'm ashamed of my lumps and bumps or anything, but when I tie it the other way around, it accentuates my lumps and bumps, and they don't need to be any bigger than they are. So yeah, so I wrap across the front. I find that is more the look that I'm going for, but you can tie it the other way as well if you want to. So yeah, so that's the Kilo jumpsuit. Overall I'm happy with it, but there are a few adjustments that I would like to make should I make it again. I can't see me making the dress version because straight skirts are me, and it's just not my bag. Okay, so my other finished object, yeah, only two, is another sewing project, and it's the Alma blouse. Both of these projects are Minerva Maker projects, so both of them, the fabrics came from Minerva for free in return for a post on their website. So the links to my Minerva profile will be down below. So the Alma blouse I made in this batik style cotton. I'm not going to say it's 100% genuine batik because I don't know if it's produced in Indonesia or not, which is where batik comes from. But it's certainly that style of fabric. And it's these beautifully bright summery colours. So I've made it in September. I was supposed to make these in the summer, I just didn't get to them. So the Alma blouse is a vintage lined blouse with a few sleeve variations and neckline variations from Sewaholic. And I've worked with Sewaholic patterns before. I know the blocks work reasonably well for me, so that was good. I did my first full bust adjustment on the Alma blouse. Yeah, never done that before. The fit's nice, I quite like that. I'll put a picture up on screen of me wearing it. So I'm quite pleased with the fit. I'm not 100% comfortable with where the points of the darts have ended up, so I want to tweak that a bit if I make it again. And I also want to slash and spread the cap sleeves for the version that I made this time round, just to give a little bit more range of motion in the arms, because I get to about there and the cap sleeve just pops off, which is not really what I'm going for. There's a tie waist option, which I chose to do on this one. Again, it's got thread loops as belt loops on it, much like I did the thread loop for the back of the Kilo. And yes, I've been able to place the belt so that it helps support the short waistedness of my body. I won't necessarily always wear it with the belts, but it's nice to have the option. And there's a concealed side zip in that blouse. The notch at the neck was the most tricky part of this one to sew. And I'm not convinced that I've got it totally as intended, but it looks fine when it's on, so it's not a problem. The other necklines are, they've got a rounded neck without the notch, and there's one with a collar as well. So it's a few options, and there's a few different sleeve lengths as well. So that's a nice pattern. It's turned out well in the fabric. Just a couple of tweaks, mostly to my own adjustment, my full bust adjustment that I did there. And yeah, range of motion for the sleeves. So I would be concerned about some of the other sleeve lengths as well in terms of range of motion. So that's my finished objects for September. So let's move along to my work in progress. Singular work in progress. Those of you who've been watching a little while will know that I had loads of yarn left over from my Terra Nova sweater, and I decided to make a striped flax light in that leftover yarn. So we're coming along. So I am well past the sleeve separation point, but you will notice that my sleeves aren't separated. I have mentioned before that I'm doing this with to get the stripes to be perfectly even across the body and the sleeves. I'm going to steek the sleeves at the end. So I am now working my sleeve decreases and trying to remember to get them the right side of my stitch markers. But I've got steek panels between the body and the sleeve. So I am in the process of putting together a video on how I am working this sweater, but obviously that's not going to be up until after it's finished. It is going to be steeked into a cardigan, so I have another steek panel down the centre front as well. And I'm going to need to find some buttons to go with this. That's going to be interesting. Don't know what colour to go for. Probably something neutral or see-through. Yeah, it partly depends on what colour I end up doing the button band in, because that will contrast with the stripes. And what I'm doing is I'm just knitting until I run out of yarn in that colour, and then I'm putting in the next colour. So I'm working my way through the leftovers from that sweater. Because otherwise they will just sit around for years and not get used and take up space and attract moths. We don't need that. Okay, so that's finished objects and works in progress. So let's talk about what I've got planned for the next month or so's crafting. Realistically, it's more than I'm going to get, certainly to the finished stage, in a month. I may not even touch some of these this month. We'll see how it goes. But first up, let's talk sewing. Now, if you have been watching a while, you'll know that when the fabric for this arrived and the Alma blouse arrived, I also got some blue floral print from Minerva. This was going to be an Isla dress from Jennifer Lauren Handmade, which is a nice vintage inspired wrap dress where the wrap is at the back of the dress. I do still want to make that dress. This fabric, however, has insisted that it does not want to be an Isla dress, and it has done this by me making mistakes. There's a theme here. So the Alma blouse I was going to do matching shorts for, but I misread the description on the website and didn't order enough yardage to do top and shorts. That's fine. I think I'd look like an ice cream if I walked around in the top and the shorts in that fabric. So that's not a problem. I also misread the width of the fabric on this blue floral fabric and didn't get enough for the dress. So I thought, okay, I'll cut out the pieces that I can cut out, calculate how much more yardage I need for the remaining pieces, and order that because the fabric is still in stock, or at least it was when I was cutting it out. Then I promptly cut out 2 pieces upside down on a directional print. So this fabric does not want to be an Isla dress. It really doesn't. It is instead going to be a tessuti apron, which is a free pattern. I'll pop a picture of that up on the screen for you as well. It's one of these wrap style aprons, so no fastenings, comes in one size, and I'm thinking that's going to be most likely a spinning apron, because where I spin with my spindles and I'm holding them up here, I quite often get fluff attached around this portion of my body, and nobody wants fluffy boob. It's not a look I'm going for. So I've been thinking about getting a spinning apron for a while, and yeah, the tessuti apron I think will fit the bill because it will have the coverage up there and I'll be able to throw it on over whatever I'm wearing. I may change my mind, I may end up using it in the kitchen. But at the moment I'm thinking as a spinning apron, and I think that's going to work well with that cotton, and then at some point further down the line I will get a different fabric for the Isla dress because I do still want that dress. So yeah, so that's my sewing plan. I'm just checking my notes that are down here, which is why I'm looking down. Then we have tapestry weaving. I have up here, you might be able to see a little bit in the corner of the shot, possibly, maybe, possibly not. But just up here on the top of my cubies, I have my tapestry weaving hills that I've been working on, and I'm still working on weaving the remaining hills for the next Weave With Me video to come out, and then the sky's going to need to be done, so hopefully I'll get some of that done in October. There's also obviously other weaving projects on the go, but I don't think I'm going to get to the tablet weaving at this stage. So cross stitch wise, I want to get this finished. This is a DMC pattern. It came as a kit, and the pattern is printed onto the fabric, which is why it looks pretty finished. It's not finished. There's still some blue to do, particularly on this side of the skirt. And then I need to go in and do the flowers and some back stitching for the stems of the flowers before that one is done. So it's not a huge amount to do, but I need to get cracking on that because then I can get it framed and on the wall and get the next kit in the series, because there's a few of these, and I think they'd make a nice little set to have up in here. So that's on my docket for October. Crochet wise, I have a couple of blankets that are on the go. I'm working through last year's blanket club from Gamer Crafting, using the Sophie's Garden pattern, which takes the central square of Sophie's universe and you repeat it and stitch them together. So I need to get going with that. I'm still very early in the year. I don't think I've even made it to June yet. In fact, I know I've not made it to June yet. I think I'm on April or May. So I need to get going with those. And I also have Sophie's Universe underway, which is not that far off being finished if I remember rightly, but I haven't touched it in years. And as we're now getting into colder weather, I think working on a big blanket might not be a bad idea with the price of fuel going up, because if I've got a big blanket on my lap, I won't need the fire on. So that's on the docket for the rest of the year. I also have a Christmas jumper planned, which is this pattern, the fabulously festive jumper or sweater. I can't remember off the top of my head which it's called. And the pattern is written in Norwegian. I don't speak Norwegian. I know what yarn I want to get for it. It's a DK wet sweater, so I've got that picked out, but I haven't bought it yet, so I'm planning to do that later in the month. And I have gone through the pattern with Google Translate helping me to work out what I need to do. And I think I've got that sussed now. To be fair, once I get to the body portion, it's a chart, so that's nice and straightforward. But yeah, trying to work out knitting terminology in a language you don't speak using Google Translate is interesting. Give it a go, it's hilarious. What I assume means contrast colour. I'm not going to attempt to say it. Well, I might. Minsterfarge? Like I said, I don't speak Norwegian. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's got the O with the line through it, and I don't know how to pronounce that. But Google Translate just came back with monster colour. I could cope with the main colour being referred to as base colour. That made sense. Monster colour. That did make me laugh. So I think I've worked out what I need to do for that sweater. We'll see how it goes. I've made enough sweaters. I should be able to work it out as I go if I've made any translation errors. I've not translated every single word. I've just sort of looked for what it's telling me to do where, and we'll see. So there's that on the plan, and the other thing that is planned for October that will be getting knit up in October. It will. It is Westnit's Mystery Knit Along season. You can see behind me last year's Mystery Knit Along, which was my first Westnit's Mystery Knit Along. In fact, I think it might have been my first Westnit's project. That is shawlography, which is huge. I've knit it in sock yarn. It's nice and drapey. It's lovely and warm. Great. That was a 5-colour shawl. So obviously you needed 5 skeins because it was 5 colours. And I did have, and still have, yarn left over from that I've been putting into other projects and using as scrap yarn and that kind of thing. This year, it's another 5 skein shawl if you're using your kind of standard fingering weight sock yarn type yarns. I'm using Holst. So I actually had to get, in my 3 colours, I had to get 2 of my accent colour. This is Sea Lavender. And 4 each of my main colour and contrast colour. So we've got Raven and June. And these are all in Tides, which is a wool and silk yarn. So it's going to give me lots of drape, which is nice for a shawl. It's a lot cheaper than a lot of the other yarns out there. Even when you're looking at commercial yarn, it can get quite pricey when you're talking about that quantity of yarn. So it's 70% wool, and 30% silk. And for 50 grams, which is this size, you get 287 metres or 314 yards. So Holst is usually pretty generous on its yardages, and as I say, it's nice and affordable. It comes from Denmark, nice and quickly, less than a week. It's as quick, if not quicker, than getting yarn from other UK sellers. So pleased with that. One thing I did notice on the Holst website is they now have a section called Things to Know Before You Order, which I don't think used to exist. So that's a useful section to check out. And one tip it gives for people buying from the UK is there's a cut-off point for the value of the package coming in where Holst has found that they've had difficulty getting the packages through customs, which is silly because it's well below the value limit for customs fees. But they found that they have this problem and that things just sit there for ages and then get sent back to them. So they do say to split your order. If you're getting a big order that goes over that price, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it was, but it's definitely not the 150 that the customs charges kick in at. But they do say split it into 2 orders. It's something like, I don't know, 50 maybe, 25. Check the things to know before you order section. And they say split the order into 2 and get them sent separately, and you won't have any problem getting it through. So that's useful to know. Bit more disappointingly, I have a sweater on the needles that I've had on the needles for a few years now that I keep meaning to buy more yarn for because I think I may possibly have underestimated how much to get. It's a pattern I'm coming up with myself. And it's in Holst Noble, which they're discontinuing. And they no longer have the colours that I'm using. And if I ever work out how to grade it, I can't really release a pattern where the sample is in a yarn that you can't get anymore. So I have decisions to make there. Either I keep knitting the sweater that I'm working on until I run out of yarn and hope that I've got enough, or I rip it out, use that yarn for something else, and get a different yarn for that sweater. I haven't touched this sweater in like over a year, so it's not like I'm going to make a decision anytime soon. But I was like, oh, okay, I won't add that onto my order then, as you're not making that yarn anymore. It's a shame because Holst Noble is a really nice yarn. It's Geelong, so lamb's wool, and cashmere. It's super soft. Even as I'm working with it, I haven't even blocked any of it yet other than the swatch. But it's really soft and nice to work with, so bit of a shame, but it probably wasn't selling as well as their other yarns. So it's a little bit more expensive than the rest of their stock. I mean, not expensive by other companies' standards, don't get me wrong, but for Holst it was a more expensive line, and they do now have some hand-dyed yarns that they have at a higher price point, and some alpaca and stuff, so they're not going to be able to do everything. But so that was a bit of a shame. There we are. That's my plans for October. Let's see how much I actually get done in the month. I would not expect the blankets to be finished in October. Hoping to make progress on them, but I would not expect them to be finished. I will be getting the sewing done because that's already overdue for Minerva. So that's going to be in the next week or so. Obviously the West Knits Mystery Knit Along, that's definitely going to be happening in October. First clue comes out on the 6th. And I will be knitting along. I'm hoping it's going to jumpstart my knitting mojo. The flax light shouldn't have been taking as long as it has been. I just haven't been in the mood, which is fine. These things happen. But I'm hoping having the mystery knit along is just going to spark something and get me going. I think part of the issue with the flax light, to be fair, is because I'm sticking the sleeves. The rounds are so much longer. So much longer. So much slower to knit. But hopefully I'll get that finished in October as well. So we'll see where I get to. We'll touch base in a month and look back at my my plans and what I actually did. There's bound to be a few things on there in the what I've been working on in October video that aren't on the plan at all, because of course there are. Okay, so I aim to put a video out every weekend, and I'd love to see you in the next one. So do the stuff down below, and until next time, happy crafting, and bye bye for now.